Shalom, friends, and welcome to Walking the Ancient Path, where we journey back into the language, landscape, and life rhythms of the Scriptures in a lighter, more accessible way, exploring the world of the Bible as its original listeners would have experienced it.
Today, we'll pick up our exploration of the entire book of Galatians verse by verse and unpack each passage within the context of organic ancient Hebrew thought, formatted like a living Hebrew commentary.
Let's pick up where we left off, beginning in Galatians chapter 4.
Verse 1. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differ nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all.
Here is what I mean. As long as the heir is still a child, he is no different from a servant, even though the whole estate is his by right.
The heir, in Hebrew imagery, the yoresh, inheritor, is the son who will one day take possession of his father's land and name. The Galatians are heirs of Abraham's promise. As long as he is a child, until he reaches maturity, the heir does not yet have full authority. Visually, a boy running around the tents watched by tutors, even though he is destined to one day carry the clan's staff, differ nothing from a servant. Though he will inherit, in practice he lives under rules, guidance, and discipline much like a servant. Though he be Lord of all, the inheritance technically belongs to him, but he has not yet experienced it. In Hebrew imagery, the field is his on paper, but he cannot yet sow it freely until the Father declares the time has come.
Verse 2. But is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father.
But he remains under guardians and stewards until the date set by his father.
Under tutors and governors, these are caretakers assigned to guide and manage the child's affairs. In Hebrew imagery, household overseers who discipline, protect, and keep the heir within boundaries until maturity. Until the time appointed of the Father, all others are waiting for the Father to decide when the child is ready to fully inherit. In imagery, the clan father chooses the day when the leadership staff is passed to the son. Israel under Torah was like an heir still in childhood, entitled to the inheritance but not able to claim it until Messiah came and the Father declared the time was fulfilled.
Verse 4. But when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law.
But when the fullness of time arrived, Elohim sent out his son, born of a woman, born under the Torah.
The fullness of time. In Hebrew imagery, this signifies the ripeness of the harvest. The Father had set the season, and when the grain was ready, he acted. Nothing early, nothing late, exactly at the appointed time. God sent forth his Son. The language conveys the weight of his mission. In imagery, the Father releases his firstborn into the world, like a runner carrying his seal and authority. Made of a woman, emphasizing genuine humanity. In Hebrew thought, not an apparition or angel, but someone who endured the labor of a mother's womb, sharing fully in flesh. Made under the law, Yeshua entered the same covenant framework that Israel bore. In imagery, he walked under the same cords in the same tent law, to fulfill it perfectly and redeem those bound by it.
Verse 5. To redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons.
He came to buy back those under the weight of Torah, so that we might receive adoption as sons.
To redeem echoes the Hebrew gal, the act of a kinsman redeemer who pays the price to free relatives from slavery or debt. In imagery, Messiah enters the slave market, pays the ransom, and leads his kin out with lifted heads. Them that were under the law, those bound by Torah's demands and condemnation. In imagery, men carrying a heavy yoke they could never fully bear, that we might receive. The goal of redemption is not simply freedom from bondage, but reception of something greater. Adoption of sons, in Hebrew imagery, being officially recognized as children with full inheritance rights, no longer treated like servants under tutors. Here, adoption means being placed as mature heirs in the Father's household, bearing his name and inheritance.
Verse 6. And because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of His Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father.
And because you are sons, Elohim has sent the Ruach of His Son into your hearts, crying out, Abba, Father.
Because you are sons, adoption is not just a theory, but reality. In Hebrew imagery, once the father declares you his child, the household recognizes it, and the inheritance is guaranteed. God has sent forth the Spirit of His Son. Just as He sent His Son into the world, He now sends the Son's own Ruach into those who walk in trust. In imagery, the Father breathes the Son's breath into our lungs, filling us with His life, into your hearts. The heart, Lev. In Hebrew, thought is not just feelings, but the seat of will, thought, and desire. The Ruach penetrates the center of who we are, crying, Abba, Father. Abba is the Aramaic cry of closeness like Papa. In Hebrew imagery, the child rushes into the tent breathless, calling out with joy and certainty to the clan father. The Ruach gives us the voice of sons, not slaves.
Verse 7. Wherefore thou art no more a servant, but a son, and if a son, then an heir of God through Christ.
So then you are no longer a servant, but a son, and if a son, then also an heir through Elohim in Messiah.
No more a servant, the images of a slave or household worker with no inheritance rights. Paul declares that this is no longer the believer's standing. In Hebrew imagery, the cords of servitude are cut loose, but a son, to be a son, ben, is to be acknowledged in the Father's house with full status and belonging. The transition is from outsider to family. And if a son, then an heir. Sonship automatically means inheritance. In Hebrew imagery, the son is entitled to the Father's land, name, and blessing. Of God through Christ, the inheritance is not earned but flows from belonging to Elohim's household through union with Messiah. In imagery, the Father's estate is opened wide to all who are clothed in the Son.
Verse 8. Howbeit then, when you knew not God, you did service unto them, which by nature are no gods.
Back then, when you did not know Elohim, you were enslaved to those who by nature are no gods at all.
When you knew not God, in Hebrew thought, yada, to know, represents intimate, covenantal knowing rather than just awareness. They had no covenant relationship with the living Elohim. You did service. The word suggests slavery, ritual devotion, such as bending the knee or pouring out offerings, but to masters who were unable to save. Unto them which by nature are no gods, idols and false powers disguised as deities but ultimately hollow. Using Hebrew imagery, carved stones and wood, lifeless and breathless yet demanding loyalty. Paul reminds them they once bowed to shadows instead of the true living Yahweh.
Verse 9. But now, after that you have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn you again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto you desire again to be in bondage?
But now, after you have come to know Elohim, or rather, after being known by Elohim, how is it that you turn back again to the weak and poverty-stricken elements, wanting once more to be enslaved by them?
After that you have known God, or rather are known of God. Paul sharpens the point. The greater truth is not that they understood him, but that he understood and took hold of them. In Hebrew imagery, the shepherd calls them by name and identifies them as his own. How turn you again? A shocking reversal. In imagery, like a freed slave choosing to return to Pharaoh's brickworks, weak and beggarly elements. These elements are the basic principles, outward practices, or even cosmic forces. Paul describes them as feeble and impoverished, in imagery broken sticks pretending to be staffs of strength. To be in bondage again, their desire to submit once more to these systems is puzzling. In Hebrew imagery, they chained themselves again when the prison doors had already been thrown open.
We'll pause here and continue in our next episode.
If you listeners have areas of interest you'd like to explore further, questions, or comments, please don't hesitate to let us know.